Oral questions, questions orales. L'honorable député de Regina Capel.
Honourable member for Regina Capel.
After 8 years, the Prime Minister is not worth the cost or the crime, and now extortion is the latest crime wave plaguing our communities. When common sense Conservatives were in office, we toughened penalties for dangerous and repeat offenders, and as a result, the crime rate went down. Turns out when thugs fear getting caught, they commit fewer crimes. Extortion is up all across the country thanks to easier penalties and easier bail. Will the government finally admit the mistake of their previous crime legislation, adopt common sense Conservative policies to keep criminals off the street?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, no surprise the Conservatives don't want to talk about the economy this morning because we've had a blockbuster of good news. The job numbers released today by Stats Canada show that Canada gained 37,000 new jobs in January. Unemployment is down to 5.7%, and get this, Mr. Speaker, wages have increased by 5.3% in January. Among women, 6.2%. We are bringing home big paychecks for Canadians who are all at work, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Regina Capel.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's no wonder the Liberals don't want to talk about crime because our communities across the country are becoming less safe. It's a direct result from the Liberal legislation which reduced penalties. Their bill C5 actually eliminated a mandatory jail sentence for people who commit extortion. As a result, extortion is up dramatically. Get this, Mr. Speaker, it's up 366% in BC. This is extortion. People are now losing their property and their money because gangsters are extorting them in Canada after 8 years of this Prime Minister. When will he put an end to his soft-on-crime approach?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Monsieur le Président, c'est tellement des bonnes nouvelles qu'on va le...
Mr. Speaker, it's such good news that we're going to repeat the good news in the other official language. In January, there was great news for Canadians. The economy, we created 37,000 jobs in January. The unemployment rate has dropped to 5.7%. Wages rose 5.3% in January. And for women in January, wages increased by 6.2%. We are giving Canadians good paychecks. We are here for Canada, Mr. Speaker.
Just like to remind all members that as some previous speakers have put it, it's question period, not necessarily answer period. The Honourable Member from Regina Capel.
This is a slap in the face to every single victim of violent and dangerous crime in this country. The Liberals are running around telling Canadians that they've never had it so good. Meanwhile, business owners and families are being extorted. Extorted, Mr. Speaker, in Canada, a developed G7 country, now sees extortion rates as high as 218% up nationally, 262% increase in Ontario. And all the Liberals can do is get up and tell Canadians how good they've had it. When will the Liberals put the rights of victims first and honest Canadians and put dangerous criminals behind bars where they belong?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, far too Canadians have been experiencing this situation. It is precisely why the RCMP is seized with this issue, working directly with local police. Mr. Speaker, this is something we're seeing operating with organized crime. But what we also know is the Conservative tough talk on crime doesn't actually create the solutions and the results. We've seen that as they've cut funding to the RCMP to do this very work, to crack down on organized crime, but we're going to be there for Canadians.
The Honourable Member from Calgary, Nose Hill.
After 8 years of the Liberal government, towns that used to be peaceful are being terrorized by foreign gangs that threaten our neighbourhoods with violence and arson. And the rate of extortion across Canada is up a whopping 218%. Canadians are living in fear for their lives because of NDP Liberal bills like C5, which eliminated mandatory jail time for extortion with a firearm. This means dangerous criminals stay on the street, and it's time to stop the crime. Will the Liberals reverse this dangerous bill that keeps dangerous criminals on the street?
Hear, hear. Well,
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I find it interesting that the members opposite bring up issues around firearms and safety in our communities when they actually just over 60 days ago voted against $80 million for the RCMP that would specifically go to supporting the work of the RCMP on guns and gangs and organized crime. Mr. Speaker, we are taking the issue of extortion very seriously. This is why the RCMP are working with local police, and the Conservative cuts wouldn't solve this issue.
The Honourable Member from Calgary Nose Hill.
But 8 years ago, under the last Conservative government, extortion was down. It was 5 times lower, and the budget was balanced. And the Mayor of Surrey has taken note in a letter pleading with the Liberals to do something about the explosion of life-threatening extortion in her community. She said she has terrified people in her community. Conservatives will restore mandatory minimum sentences for convicted extortionists, stop the crime explosion rate that is terrorizing Canadians across the country. Will the Liberals?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives' tough on crime talk doesn't result in action. But what we are doing is taking concrete steps to deal with extortion and organized crime in this country. I said earlier that just 60 days ago, those very members voted against $80 million to support the work of the RCMP.
Terrible.
Cuts have consequences, and the Conservatives have not learned their lesson that when it comes to dealing with safety in this country, we need to invest in the expertise of our police forces.